Pray with me. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our salvation. Amen. Now, the context for today's sermon is one, as I said, where Jesus is moving from the north to the south, from Galilee down to Judea. He'd been in his home territory for approximately 3 years, but at this point, his ministry, his message, needed to go to the heart of the matter. It would be very similar to maybe marching on Washington, D.C., or something of that nature. So he's headed towards Jerusalem. Now, in the previous 3 years, Jesus had often confronted people who had differences of opinion with him. You know, you don't say, "Blessed are the poor, for they will inherit the earth," and expect the rich people to like you. And so he had differences with in religion, in economics, and in politics that he had expressed and been questioned on many times, especially by the Pharisees. And the Pharisees were kind of the outlying representations of the Jewish faith, and so he ran into them all the time. What's odd in this pericope, or this text, is that the Pharisees, whoever these two are that come to him, want to warn him. Instead of trying to catch him, they're trying to help him get away. Remember Nicodemus, the one who cares for Jesus' body, was a Pharisee. So Jesus is moving from the northern region, which was a hotbed for sedition for years, had spawned one revolt after another, always followed by the devastation that Rome could give. It was not uncommon for Rome to execute or crucify thousands in one day. During a particular revolt, they lined from the north to the city the main road, side by side, cross after cross after cross. And in crucifixion, you don't take the body down when the person dies. You leave it there till the dogs get it and the birds. It's vicious, vicious. So Jesus knows what he's getting into. He's faced it before, but now he's going to the heart of the situation. What's curious is that for many times, especially in the Gospel of Mark, where we call it the Messianic secret, every time Jesus performs a great act or a deed, or he breaks a rule or a law, religious or otherwise, he tells his disciples to be quiet. He says, "Don't tell anybody. Shh." Because Rome had eyes and ears everywhere. Rome had eyes and ears everywhere, including Herod, who was the procurator of Galilee, and his main point, his regional capital, originally in Sepphoris, was moved to Tiberias, right on the Sea of Galilee where Jesus hung out. So he was continually aware of what was going on. And remember, this Herod is the same one who executed Jesus' cousin, John the Baptist. No wonder Jesus says, let's keep a lid on this. But in this text we read today, what jumps out at me is Jesus is no longer keeping quiet. Jesus is no longer keeping quiet. He doesn't tell anybody not to do it. In fact, he does just the opposite. These Pharisees come to him and say, you need to get out of town and you need to do it quick because they want to kill you. And Jesus doesn't hightail it away. Jesus, in essence, goes to Herod, and he says, "You tell that fox. I know who he is and what he is about." He has resolved himself. Jesus has apparently resolved himself to the situation and the mission. And rather than silencing his followers, he calls Herod a fox. Now, that may not sound too it may sound pretty innocent to you, but do you guys know about what foxes are like? None of you are farm kids, right? Out west where I come, they pay you to shoot foxes and coyotes because they destroy crops. They come at night, they stalk, they break into the hen house, they kill the chickens. Jesus says, you tell Herod, I know who he is. He's sneaky. He's a nighttime scavenger. He feeds on others. He wreaks havoc. He destroys life, and he does it all for himself, for power and gain. I have to believe that when this is uttered and when the words get back to Herod, Jesus' face is now the new poster in the local post office for the 10 most wanted people in the land. Okay, so now I get to the heart of things. You know, when you hear a sermon, the main question that I should answer, and if I don't, I've failed, is so what? So what? You got this ancient story, and it's kind of cute, but so what? What's it mean? How's this ancient story, how is it relevant to us today? Let me see if I can make it so. On the day my father died, and some of you have been through this, you've lost your parents or you've lost others, but primarily in the context of losing a parent, all these emotions flood. You know, the floodgates just open up and your mind just spits out all these thoughts and these memories, and you have to wrestle through them, and it takes time to kind of sort it all out. But what was interesting, on the day my father passed away and the floodgates opened in my head, the one thing that stuck out, that I thought about, and the one thing that has stuck with me was this. Keith, your father's gone. Wake up. There is now no one between you and, you know, when you got a parent, the parents always kind of, all of a sudden when they're gone, it's your turn to step up to bat. There's no one between you and whatever. And all of a sudden I thought to myself, wow, it's time to grow up. And then immediately I thought, well, you got to be kidding. I'm 36 years old. I've grown up. I have a job. I have kids. I have a family. I've grown up. But what I came to understand over time was that in life, and I don't care what your age is, in life there are these moments, there are these events and times, either they happen by fate or fury or chance, that everything, it's almost like it's out of control. You're a part of it and you aren't part of it. It's all swirling around you like a great musical piece that the composer or an orchestra and the instruments are playing here and there, and in some place there's dissonance and in another place there's harmony, but they're all swirling together, and in that moment you are caught in the vortex of it all, and there's no place to turn, there is no place to hide, there is no place to run. You are just there. Those times come maybe because of decisions we've made and subsequent actions, but mainly they are beyond our control. They've been in our control in some ways, but so many other people's as well. They are beyond our control, and we are caught in that vortex. Some might say, and excuse me for saying it this way, but some might say, okay, Keith, it's time to man up. It's time to man up. Grow up. You're 36. It's those times when reality smacks us in the face and we are called to be all, to give all, to stand up for all that we have professed to believe in. Or not. It was John Asraf who said that if you are interested, you'll do what is convenient. But if you are committed, you'll do whatever it takes. Pat Riley, the Hall of Fame basketball coach, he said there are only two options regarding commitment. Either you're in or you are out. And of course, the greatest philosopher of all time, one that I would be very remiss if I didn't mention, Mike Tyson. He's right there with Plato. Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a strategy, everybody has a plan, till you get punched in the face. It's kind of shocking that came out of Mike Tyson's life, but it's actually very relevant. Everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. Now, most of us would agree that life is good, right? Most of us would say. We've had far more good times than difficult times. Life is good, but in the same breath we say life is short. You ever said that? Life is short? If you've said that or you believe that, then life cannot be something to waste or glide through. And no matter how old we get, there's always room to grow as we move through various stages of our existence. Different stages in life require different strategies, different ways of seeing and thinking and acting. You know, the Apostle Paul said, when I was a child, I thought like a child, I acted like a child, but now that I'm adult, I put away childish things. I'm not going to be a kid anymore. And we know this. We've been through this. You guys got a lot of this ahead of you. You graduate from high school and you think, man, these guys are going to be friends for life. I hope they are. But not so much usually, or college. And you get to the stage in life where all your friends are getting married, so you think to yourself, well, that's a good idea, I'll get married. You go to all these weddings. Then all your friends have babies, and you think, well, maybe not. You know, the best birth control is to spend time with families that have babies. I'm just telling you the way it is, you know. And then you go through a stage in life where your friends all get divorced and remarried, right? Change jobs. You go through another stage in life where all of a sudden they're all dying. And at each one of those stages, my point is, you have to change how you think, and those things will change how you think. And you move on, and you regroup, and you set up a new strategy. It's that way for us personally, but also with groups, churches, institutions, governments, and nations. And when they don't do it, when they don't recognize those things, you don't recognize those stages, that's when we get in trouble, because we're playing the game by a strategy that's worn out or outdated. And here's where it all comes together for me, because I feel we are going through this same thing, this stage, this experience, whatever, in regard a transition that we are experiencing as a nation and maybe as a world. I mean, we all sense that things are different, they're changing, we express it in all kinds of ways, but we really don't want to acknowledge it. We in this country have been the recipients of much. We have been the inheritors of a legacy that was provided by people who fought and died for things we take for granted. As such, we have been inherently blessed. And now we're at that time where that generation is gone. Or almost. And it's our responsibility. It will be your responsibility. It's our responsibility as never before. The times, the events, the tears, and the blood, they now lie at our front doorstep. It's very clear to me when I turn on the news and I watch the situation, which greatly bothers me in the Ukraine, or I read or hear about increasing attacks on people's civil rights and the simple ability and the gift to vote. The increasing number of crimes, especially hate crimes, they are catastrophic and rising that the FBI has. Crimes perpetrated against the weak or the innocent, often against women, the LGBTQ community, people of color, varying ethnicity, and the random violence we were once shocked by is just the nightly news. You remember the first time, you remember Sandy Hook? How shocked we were by that? Or by Tulsa? How appalled we were, and yet nightly these things go on, and we just wait for the next episode of MasterChef. I kind of like that show, that's why it's been in my mind a while. You see, rather than taking the values we say we espouse for granted, it's time that we think about the fact that they lie on the precipice of their demise. I don't like paying for more gas. My bill's gone up a lot. But given its ties to the lives of people in an oppressed country, why do I complain? I mean, what really is too much to pay for a vehicle that is much nicer than I need, takes me anywhere I want? How does that really compare to saving a life? I don't think just anything should be taught in our schools, but having been a high school teacher for a few years, I remember how I would chafe at the restrictions placed on me by individuals who never, ever stepped foot in a classroom and wouldn't dare to do it. It troubles me greatly that the same politicians who would implement these all kinds of restrictions would never accept others placing restrictions on them or what they say. I was stunned this past week when I read one comment. You think they're old enough? You guys, you're old enough, right? Kids are out. One politician this past week, in regards to the discussion about violence and women and the abortion issue, he bragged that he told his daughters that if someone ever tried to rape them, they should just lay back and enjoy it. Doesn't that make you sick? I mean, that goes far beyond okay, so why do we overlook it or allow it, or the worst, even maybe laugh at it? They say these things on far greater pulpit than I have, and it's just stupidity. They aren't even foxes. I don't, anyway. I could go on, but I won't. I want to hear the choir. They're better than me anyway. But what I'm saying to you is that I please hope that you go home and you think about what I'm trying to say. It is because of battles fought for us in the past that we have child labor laws, that women obtained the right to property and to vote. Did you know that less than 100 years ago, in almost every state in this country, women did not own property? That when you got married, everything you owned or everything you would ever own, well, you didn't own it, it became your husband's. And that a husband, since divorce was frowned upon, a husband could put you in an insane asylum by simply saying you have the wrong theological beliefs. It's true. And of course, if the woman protested, they'd ask the husband, because who would know better if she's crazy or not than the husband? Some of you better be very, very careful. Alexander Hamilton once said, "We either stand for something or we fall for anything." We either stand for something or we fall for anything. And I would submit that Jesus understood what this meant. At the time and the context in which our scripture was given, there was no going back for Jesus. There was no place for him to run. There was no one to hide behind or to hide from. He clearly recognized that he had to face the worst of humanity if he was going to save humanity. Soren Kierkegaard once said that the tyrant dies and his rule ends, but the martyr dies and his rule begins. I guess it can all be summed up, friends. It's time. It's time for the best in all of us to grow up. Amen.